Imagine you're moving 10,000 miles across the globe.
Right, a massive move.
Yeah, exactly. It's 1982, you're packing up your life, and the only thing you flat out refuse to leave behind is a mountain of incredibly heavy, highly fragile, temperature-sensitive plastic.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's not packing light.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. And for you listening right now, think about what you would prioritize in a massive international move.
Most of us prioritize mobility.
Right. We sell the heavy furniture, we, donate the books, we tell ourselves we'll just buy new things when we get there.
It's the ultimate logistical edit. I mean, when people cross oceans, they generally strip their lives down to the bare essentials. Mobility requires this certain ruthlessness regarding your physical possessions.
Yeah, you have to be ruthless. But today, we're taking a deep dive into the life of a man who looked at the absolute heaviest, most cumbersome collection of items imaginable and essentially said, I am not leaving without my records.
Which is just wild to think about.
It really is. So today's deep dive is built from a Wikipedia article detailing the life and career of a man named Vince Peach.
And it's a fascinating read.
It is. And our mission today is to explore how this one man's physical vinyl collection and his unapologetic passion for a very specific type of music birthed what is widely believed to be the longest-running soul radio show in the entire world.
A show that has literally spanned continents.
Right, and outlasted massive technological shifts and anchored a community for 40 years.
On paper, the source material just reads as a biographical entry about an Australian radio host.
Yeah, it looks pretty straightforward.
But when you look at the mechanics of his journey, it's actually a masterful case study in how subcultures physically migrate.
Oh, I like that phrase, physically migrate.
Yeah, because it shows us how a highly specific, localized passion can transplant itself to an entirely new hemisphere, put down roots and completely bypass commercial gatekeepers to build this enduring cultural institution.
Absolutely. But to really understand how a 40-year legacy gets built in Australia, we have to look at the musical crucible where this passion was originally forged.
Right, which takes us back to England.
Exactly. According to the article, Vince Peach was born in Liverpool, and he became a key player in the mod revival scene.
A very specific, very intense era.
Yeah. But the detail that really anchors his story is his weekly pilgrimage to a place called the Twisted Wheel Club.
Oh, the legendary Twisted Wheel.
Okay, let's unpack this, because making a weekly pilgrimage to a club, it kind of reminds me of a die-hard modern music fan following their favorite band on a grueling tour, right?
That's a great analogy, actually.
So at the Twisted Wheel, the source says he absorbs the very beginnings of the Northern Soul movement and eventually steps up to take on the role of DJ. But before we go any further, I need you to break this down for me, and for anyone listening who isn't a music historian.
Sure, yeah.
What exactly is the Northern Soul movement? I mean, what makes a record Northern Soul?
That is a crucial question. Because to understand Vince Peach, you really have to understand the currency he was trading in.
Right.
What's fascinating here is that Northern Soul isn't a genre in the way that, say, disco or grunge is a genre.
It's not just a style of playing instruments.
No, not at all. It wasn't created by a specific group of contemporary artists trying to invent a new sound. Northern Soul was entirely a retrospective, curation-based subculture.
Curation-based, meaning they were just finding older stuff.
Exactly. It emerged in the industrial north of England in the late 1960s and 70s, and the sound was heavily based on a specific driving rhythm.
Okay, like what kind of rhythm?
We're talking about a heavy four-on-the-floor beat, usually hovering around 100 to 120 beats per minute.
So a tempo specifically engineered for dancing.
Engineered for all-night, athletic, relentless dancing, that's the key. The club-goers in places like the Twisted Wheel wanted the sound of mid-60s Tamla Motown, but they wanted the obscure tracks.
Wait, why were they hunting for the obscure ones? Why not just play the American hits that made it to the top 40?
Because the entire identity of the subculture was wrapped up in exclusivity.
Ah, okay. The cool factor of knowing something nobody else knows.
Exactly that. Many of these American soul records were commercial failures in the United States. Perhaps the local U.S. label didn't have the budget for national distribution.
Or they just didn't catch on for whatever reason.
Right. Or the artist only ever pressed like 500 copies of a single.
Oh.
These records just languished in American warehouses, completely forgotten.
That's so sad, actually.
But British crate diggers and DJs would travel to the States, find these discarded singles, and bring them back to clubs like the Twisted Wheel.
They were essentially sonic archaeologists.
That is a very accurate way to look at it. If you were a DJ in that scene, your reputation was built entirely on your record box.
Just having the rarest stuff.
Yes. It was so competitive that DJs would literally steam the paper labels off their vinyl records.
Wait, really? Just peel them off.
Yeah, or cover them up with markers so that rival DJs couldn't peek over their shoulder and see who the artist was.
Oh, wow. That is intense.
They call them cover-ups. You had to own the physical piece of rare vinyl to have power in that club. You couldn't just download it, obviously, and you couldn't just stream it.
Okay, that context fundamentally changes how I view his migration.
How so?
Well, initially, when I read that Vince Peach migrated from Liverpool to Melbourne, Australia in 1982 and brought his entire vinyl record collection with him, I kind of had a slightly cynical reaction.
You thought he was just being stubborn.
Yeah. I thought, isn't that just a refusal to adapt? I mean, by 1982, cassette tapes are booming. The Sony Walkman is everywhere.
True, the technology was shifting.
Right. So lugging crates of vinyl across the equator just sounded like a hoarder who couldn't let go of his youth.
I get why you'd think that. It's easy to look at it through the lens of modern convenience and see it as an unnecessary burden, but you have to remember what those records represented. They weren't just a playlist of his favorite songs. That collection was his cultural archive.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Let's talk about the physical reality of moving that archive.
The logistics.
Yeah. Vinyl is made of polyvinyl chloride. It is incredibly sensitive to its environment.
Oh, absolutely. Heat is the enemy.
Right. If you leave a record in a hot car for a few hours, it warps into this unplayable bowl shape. If you drop a crate, the discs crack.
They're so fragile.
So shipping heavy, temperature-sensitive crates of vinyl on a cargo ship or a plane from the UK to Australia in 1982, before the era of climate-controlled, cheap global shipping, that's a massive logistical and financial undertaking.
It's a monumental risk. But he took that risk because those records were his tools.
His tools. Okay, explain that.
Well, think of a carpenter.
Mm.
Carpenter doesn't move across the world and leave their specialized tools behind, assuming they can just buy generic replacements, right?
Oh, that makes perfect sense.
Vince Peach's identity, his expertise, and his ability to contribute to a musical community were entirely locked inside the grooves of those specific rare records.
He literally couldn't be who he was without them.
Precisely. And the wisdom of bringing those tools becomes apparent almost immediately, because by 1984, just 2 years after arriving in Melbourne, he finds a new outlet.
Right, the radio
He
station.
begins broadcasting his music on a Melbourne community radio station, PBS 106.7 SM.
Which the source notes operates under the Progressive Broadcasting Service Cooperative Limited.
That's the one.
Now, taking an underground UK club sound and pushing it out over the Melbourne airwaves, that feels like a massive cultural gamble.
It really was.
How does a guy with a niche collection of rare soul records even get a foot in the door at a radio station in the mid-'80s?
He gets in the door because of the specific mechanics of community radio. We have to separate PBS 106.7 FM from the commercial radio model.
Because commercial radio is a whole different beast.
Completely different. Commercial radio is driven by advertising revenue, which means the programming directors are aggressively risk-averse.
They just want to play whatever's safe.
Exactly. They only want to play music that appeals to the broadest possible demographic to keep listeners tuned in through the commercial breaks.
So they're not going to take a chance on a guy playing B-sides from 1966.
A commercial station would never hand over 2 hours of airtime to an obscure imported British subculture based on failed American soul singles.
Because there's no guaranteed mass market for it.
Precisely. But community radio operates on a completely inverted model. Stations like PBS are cooperatives,
So they're listener-supported.
heavily reliant on volunteer broadcasters and listener subscriptions, yes. Their mandate isn't to capture a massive generic audience. Their mandate is to serve the underserved.
Oh, I love that. To serve the underserved.
They provide a platform for niche interests, specialized genres, and authentic musical expression that the commercial gatekeepers ignore.
So PBS was just the perfect incubator for this.
Exactly. PBS provided this incredibly fertile ground. Vince Peach didn't have to convince a corporate executive that his music was marketable.
He just needed to be authentic.
He just had to bring his authentic passion and his incredibly rare physical collection to an antenna that was willing to broadcast it.
And that broadcast birthed a show called Soul Time. And this is where the sheer timeline of the source material just stops you in your tracks.
The longevity is unbelievable.
It is. Because it's one thing to get a niche show on a community radio station. It's an entirely different feat to cultivate that show into a 40-year institution.
4 decades. It's wild.
Soul Time has been on the air for 40 years. The source notes that he currently broadcasts Saturdays from 11 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon and Wednesdays from 3 to 5 in the afternoon.
And it holds a pretty significant record, right?
Yeah, it's widely believed to be the longest-running soul show in the world. He earned the nickname Vince the Prince Peach, and his legacy was even captured in an ABC television documentary titled 25 Years of Soul Time.
Which is funny because
Which is amazing because that documentary is now 15 years out of date.
if we connect this to the bigger picture, the endurance of the program is staggering. Think about the turnover rate in the media industry.
Oh, it's brutal. Shows get canceled after one season constantly.
Most television shows, most bands, most publications do not survive 40 years of cultural shifts.
This is exactly what I want to dig into because as someone who loves discovering new things, I'm deeply curious about how you prevent a highly specific genre-based show from eventually just becoming a dusty museum exhibit.
A nostalgia trip.
Right. If you're playing the music of the 1960s, how do you keep it feeling vital and urgent week after week, year after year?
It's a real challenge for any retrospective DJ.
My theory, looking at the details in the source, is that the secret lies in the mixing. The article explicitly points out that he plays styles from the 60s right through to the modern day.
That is the crucial mechanism of his longevity. He is not treating Northern Soul as a closed historical chapter.
Right, because I imagine it would be very easy to just trap your listeners in an amber fossil of 1968.
And some DJs do that, and that's fine for a certain audience.
But how does a DJ actually mix a rare track from 1968 with a modern soul release without it giving the listener sonic whiplash?
You do it by tracing the musical DNA.
Musical DNA. Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, a skilled curator, like Vince Peach, doesn't just play songs sequentially. He builds a sonic narrative.
Okay.
He might take a classic Northern Soul track with a very specific driving bass line and then seamlessly transition into a modern soul track released in, say, 2024 that samples that exact same bass line.
Oh, so it sounds related.
Right. Or maybe it utilizes that same 4-on-the-floor tempo. By doing that, he actively demonstrates to the listener that the genre is still breathing.
That is so smart. It bridges the gap.
He shows how the modern artists are directly conversing with the pioneers of the 60s. It educates the audience, rather than just drowning them in pure nostalgia.
For you listening to us right now, think about your own relationship with music discovery. We live in an era of algorithmic fatigue.
Oh, absolutely. The algorithms dictate everything.
You log on to Spotify or Apple Music, and a mathematical equation looks at the tempo and key of a song you liked and spits out a mathematically similar song.
It's efficient.
It is efficient, but it's deeply sterile. What Vince Peach offers is the antidote to the algorithm.
That is the profound cultural weight of a 40-year run. Through the transition from vinyl to cassette to CD to MP3 and finally to streaming.
He's survived all of those.
He has been sitting in a studio dropping a needle on a record twice a week, every week. That level of human curation builds an unbreakable trust.
You just can't fake that.
No, you can't. An algorithm cannot replicate the lived experience of a DJ who's actually standing in the Twisted Wheel Club sweating to these records in the 1970s.
That nickname, the Prince, denotes a literal musical royalty earned through decades of context, history, and unwavering service to his audience.
And that audience eventually grew beyond Melbourne.
Yes. Unwavering service to a community that eventually outgrew the physical broadcast radius of a Melbourne radio tower.
The technological shift changes everything.
It really does, because while Vince built this incredible, tangible local kingdom in Melbourne, a massive technological shift unexpectedly transformed his local show into a nationwide lifeline.
The internet changes the game.
We're talking about the advent of internet radio streaming. According to the article, this technological leap allowed Soul Time to reach fans all across Australia.
Which is a massive landmass.
Exactly. But the specific detail that fascinated me was how the internet stream became a focal point for the strong British diaspora living in Perth, Western Australia.
It's a brilliant collision of geography, technology, and culture.
To truly appreciate this, we have to look at the map. Perth is incredibly isolated.
One of the most isolated cities in the world.
It sits on the far western coast of Australia, separated from Melbourne by thousands of miles of the Nullarbor Plain and vast deserts.
So a standard radio signal is never going to reach there.
Never. And in the early days of the internet, before high-speed broadband, setting up a reliable audio stream was clunky.
Oh, it was awful.
You dealt with low byte rates, constant buffering, and terrible compression. But for the British expats living in Perth, the audio quality didn't matter.
It was about the connection.
So what does this all mean? The stream functioned like a digital flare sent up over the outback.
Think about the psychology of that diaspora. Perth has historically been a major destination for British migrants.
Seeking a warmer climate, right?
Warmer climate, new economic opportunities. But migration inherently involves a severing of your cultural roots. You leave behind the pubs, the clubs, the specific sounds of your youth.
So imagine you're one of those British expats. You're sitting in Perth, thousands of miles from the UK, feeling that deep, specific ache of homesickness.
It hits you hard.
And you tap into this early internet stream from a community station in Melbourne. Suddenly, through the static and the buffering, you hear a voice with an authentic British background drop the needle on a rare northern soul track.
A track you probably haven't heard in decades.
A track you haven't heard since you were 20 years old in the north of England. It's like tapping into a secret telegraph line back to your youth.
This raises an important question, though. It completely upends a very common assumption we have about the internet.
Which is?
We so often worry that global connectivity dilutes local culture. We fear that the internet washes away regional quirks and replaces them with a bland, homogenized, universal pop culture.
Right, everyone just watching the same viral videos.
Exactly. But in the case of Vince Peach, the exact opposite happened.
The internet concentrated the culture instead of diluting it?
Exactly that. It took this deeply physical analog artifact, a spinning piece of vinyl in a small Melbourne studio, and used digital technology to project it across a vast, empty continent.
It's almost poetic.
It served to reunite a scattered tribe of music lovers who had been geographically separated. It effectively created a massive virtual dance floor for a diaspora that desperately needed that tangible connection to their past.
It really makes you stop and evaluate the things we choose to carry with us. A man moves a heavy pile of vinyl across the ocean in 1982, and decades later, it's electronically binding a scattered community together.
It's an incredible legacy.
It is. So, for you listening, I want you to reflect on your own passions for a moment. What is your metaphorical vinyl collection?
What's the thing you won't leave behind?
Exactly. What is the one highly specific niche interest or the one physically cumbersome artifact in your life that you would flat out refuse to leave behind? What is the thing you would gladly lug across the globe, unpack in a strange new city, and happily champion for the next 40 years?
Because Vince Peach proves that those intense, seemingly irrational passions don't just endure.
They have the power to build entirely new worlds.
And looking at how successfully he built that world leaves us with a fascinating and somewhat unsettling question about the future.
Okay, lay it on me.
We've seen how one man's deeply physical, tactile relationship with vinyl records managed to anchor a community, building 40 years of immense trust. But as we move further into an era dominated not just by digital streaming, but by artificial intelligence, the landscape is changing.
Oh boy, yeah, it is.
If the core of Vince Peach's appeal is his human curation, his lived history, and the physical rarity of his records, what happens when AI can flawlessly synthesize a radio host?
Oh, that is a wild thought.
Think about it. We're approaching a point where an AI could theoretically analyze the BPM, the key, and the historical context of every Northern Soul track ever recorded.
And just automatically generate a show.
Generate a perfectly mixed, endless radio show, complete with a synthetic voice recounting the history of the Twisted Wheel. It could mimic the format perfectly.
It probably could, yeah.
But the provocative question is, can an algorithm ever replicate the credibility of a DJ who actually sweated in those clubs?
I mean, I'd like to think not.
When the physical records are gone, and a machine can flawlessly simulate the curation, does the community still gather around the stream? Or does the magic entirely depend on knowing there is a real human being sitting in a room physically dropping a needle onto a record?
That is a phenomenal question to chew on, and it really gets to the heart of why we value human connection in our media.
It's the physical legacy versus the cloud.
It's the perfect place to leave it. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the incredible globe-spanning journey of Vince Peach.
It was a pleasure to unpack it.
Until next time, keep exploring and keep your passions close.